on X. He wrote, "The UAE, our strategic ally, has been attacked by Iran." He said this is, in effect, a declaration of the renewal of Iran's war against the allies of the United States and Israel across the region. He said the regional alliance is vital to the security of Israel and the moderate partners in the Middle East and the Gulf. Bennett is not the prime minister right now, but he runs a party called Bennett 2026. Last week, he merged with Israeli opposition leader Yair Lapid to challenge Benjamin Netanyahu. Polls have him as the leading candidate for the Prime Minister of Israel. His statement today was the forecast, a fastest, loudest defense of the UAE from an Israeli politician. The UAE Foreign Ministry called the Iranian attacks unprovoked. Pakistan, who is the sole mediator, also condemns attacks on UAE. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, in a post on X, wrote, "Ceasefire be upheld and respected," has not asked Islamabad to choose. Read Bennett's post carefully, and you can see the shape of the next Middle East being drawn in real time. He used the words "our strategic ally" for Abu Dhabi. 5 years ago, no Israeli politician could have written that sentence. Today, the man who is leading the polls to be the next Prime Minister of Israel writes it within hours of an Iranian drone hitting an Emirati oil facility. This is not a casual statement. This is a positioning. The Abraham Accords were signed in 2020. Everyone treated them as a piece of paper. What today showed is that they have become something more than a paper. The UAE got attacked, and Israeli prime ministerial candidate stood up before any Arab capital did, within hours before Riyadh, before Doha or Cairo. In loudest voice in defense of Abu Dhabi was Tel Aviv. The alliance that was theoretical 4 years ago is now operational. Iran's strike on Fujairah crystallized it. And here is where Pakistan sits in this picture. The same Saudi Arabia that backs the Pakistani mediation with Iran is being asked quietly to join regional alliance that Bennett is already calling Israeli, American, and Gulf. Riyadh had not signed up any normalization with Israel yet. The Crown Prince has been very careful for 2 years. But every time Iran fires a drone at the Gulf, the case of Bennett's alliance gets a little stronger. And every time Bennett's alliance gets stronger, the space for peace and neutrality gets a little smaller. It shrinks. This is also a squeeze on the countries like Pakistan, Turkey, and Egypt, who do not want the region recalibrated as per Israeli designs. Pakistan signed a mutual defense agreement with Saudi Arabia in September, and there are Pakistani officers in the kingdom right now. Pakistan also has the trust of Tehran. The Iranians sent the 14-point plan through us, not through anyone else. As long as Iran is firing only at Americans, we can hold both sides. The moment Iran fires at Saudi Arabia in a serious way, the way it has fired at Fujairah today, the defense pact wakes up. And the day Pakistani air defense shoots down an Iranian missile over Saudi soil is the day we stop being a mediator and start being a party. So, when you watch Bennett's tweet tonight, do not read it as one Israeli politician scoring points. Read it as the new geometry of the region. Israel and the UAE in one camp, openly. Saudi Arabia hedging, but tied to Pakistan. Pakistan tied to both Saudi Arabia and Iran. And Iran firing into the middle of all of it. The Saudis are still backing our peace plan. The question is whether Tehran continues to back it or keeps picking up a target. To discuss this, we have Aderito Vicente with us. He is a political scientist, nuclear policy scholar, assistant professor of IR, and he is a defense policy expert as well. Thank you so much, Aderito, for joining us. You must have been watching the evolving situation around Iran and US and what happened yesterday. The UAE got attacked. So I would start with the Israeli ex-prime minister's comment that came within hour before any other Middle Eastern state. And it said that attack on Fujairah is an attack on the allies. And by allies, it meant UAE, Israel, and US. Do you see the recalibration of alliances in GCC happening in real time?
Thank you so much for having me. That's a very good question. I think we are at a moment where the Trump administration perhaps cannot deal with the situation at hand at the moment. So I think the UAE is starting to be a bit nervous about what they can do because they are losing money with this blockade. So I think perhaps we will have to wait and see what the UAE will start doing besides what is happening yesterday. So I understand that the UAE wants to pass his energy towards the Gulf of Oman to avoid the blockade a bit in that part. But I'm not sure if they will manage. So we are still buying time. At the same time, we are uncertain if Trump administration would be happy with the ceasefire, or if in fact we go again to the to war again, meaning the United States against Iran.
Is this, you're a political scientist, you also look at defense and security. Is this a frozen conflict because we are in a perpetual no war, no peace kind of a zone? It's hard to say, even if there is a ceasefire intact, let it be in Lebanon, let it be in Gaza, let it be in the Strait of Hormuz. Where is this conflict heading, in your opinion?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Well, we can project that at the moment, I believe that Iran is very resilient with the current situation, even though they are having already effects in their economy because of the U.S. blockade. The problem is that the U.S. blockade is not, in my view, is not achieving the objective of meaning
What it was
of
meant to
dealing with
be.
Iran. Exactly. So the idea of the United States would be to submit Iran's economy to its will, but the problem is that at the moment that objective is not working. So I think the United States are dealing with a much more resilient adversary that they were supposed to fight about when they started this strategy. So now the problem is how they are going to deal with this. So if they are in fact trying to continue the negotiations, but at the moment the negotiations are very far away from the U.S. objectives. So probably they have to reach to a middle ground. Middle ground would be, for example, some weeks ago, the Iranians were meaning they were negotiating the idea of having like a 5-year suspension of their Iranian nuclear program, but the U.S. wanted 20 years.
Yeah.
So that would be a sticking point. But at least in my view, 5 years of suspension of Iran's nuclear program is better than the JCPOA program. So the JCPOA deal, meaning.
But Aderito, what difference would it make, even if it's 5 years or 10 years? The trajectory shows that whenever U.S. has decided, for whatever reasons, whether it's the leverage that Israel use over U.S. or whatever the reasons are, whenever U.S. has decided that it is going to attack Iran, it has attacked Iran. So where is that guarantee in the face of the nuclear guarantees that the U.S. is asking for? Is there a guarantee that U.S. is not going to attack again?
Exactly. That's the guarantees that the Iranians want from the U.S. Because in the past it happened that the U.S. violated the JCPOA in 2018, right? According to the Iranians, they pull out of the deal. At the moment, there was some kind of interdependence between the European economies and the Iranian economy. So the Europeans were fundamental for this deal to work. The problem is that the U.S. also made secondary sanctions against Europeans to deal with Iran. So they had to pull out, especially the multinational companies at the time. So the United States managed to pull out the Europeans out of, at least in terms of the private sector that were investing in the Iranian economy. So the problem is that there were no carrots for the Iranians at some point. So that's why they start making new demands, and we are in the moment of, at some point, of nuclear threshold of the Iranians. So now the important thing, and that's a very good question, is how to make the Iranians to go back to the table and then agreeing with the United States. I believe that meaning other countries like Pakistan or other countries that
Turkey.
are, it could also, meaning countries that are partners with the US and also partners with Iran somehow, that could break the deal. Especially countries like Turkey as well could be also a broker besides Pakistan. But I think at the moment the important thing is for the Americans to provide these guarantees to the Iranians, and we don't know what kind of guarantees. I believe that these guarantees has to be done through the United Nations Security Council, and again through some kind of security guarantees that would establish that
Do you see
Americans
this
would not.
matter going to United Nations Security Council, and is there a writ anymore coming from United Nations that we can rely on?
Yeah, that's the question. We know
I guess
that
we are all confused because it's just that international order has been taken over by a few countries to bend whatever way they want.
exactly a few countries, you're meaning the United States and Israel, right?
Yeah.
Or China and Russia, for that matter, or Russia in the past with the Russia-Ukraine war. But the question is how Russia and China would deal with in
In the Security
if there is
Council.
the deal, if there is a deal first with the United States, how Russia and China react to this deal, this bilateral deal, perhaps,
Right.
with the Iranians and the Americans, because as we know, the CPOA was not a bilateral deal, was a multilateral deal with with the P5 of the UN Security Council. So my question is, if there is a deal with the United States, and if some security guarantees are made, what would be the reaction of countries like Russia and China, but also the Europeans? But I would be more focused on the question of Russia's and China. But as you mentioned, we know that international order is in transition, and it's not the rules-based order has having some problems these days. So the question is, as you said, how these guarantees could be made. And I gave this idea through the UN Security Council, even though I'm aware of the difficulties that we are at hand at the moment, but I cannot see other way besides perhaps some mutual economic benefit between United States and Iran, because as we know,
At least a framework that both can agree
exactly.
on to start with. That is the least that we
Exactly.
can expect.
Exactly,
Aderito
because
Vicente, thank you so much for joining us. It was a pleasure having you on our show.
thank you.